It's not just the things that you need to do, but it's the intention and the purpose behind what you do. Oftentimes, they don't commit to their own boundaries that they set for themselves, or they give permission to clients, or they respond to that message. Therefore, it allows people to continue to reaching out to them. I do feel as though that hustle culture was really praised, and it was kind of like, if you're not hustling, then what are you doing with your life? Welcome back, all you successful stylists, to the Successful Stylist Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ambrosia Carey, and I get to welcome a guest for the second time around. You guys, we really enjoyed his visit, and I'm talking about Andrew Carruthers, who is a breathwork specialist and has been in the industry for a very long time. Our topic today, we're actually going to be kind of going more into the self-awareness piece that I feel like our community has really gotten involved with. And that has to do with just really focusing our own well-being and our own self-care. Andrew, thanks for hanging out with us again.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time last time. So I'm excited to do this one where it's a little more quick, rapid fire questions. And yeah, this will be fun.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'm going to jump right into it because you and I actually briefly talked about this at our last episode, and I'll make sure I link that in for you guys if you haven't listened to it before. But this episode specifically, I really want to talk about managing stress and maintaining your well-being. I feel like that's a hot topic right now for our industry. And I would love to hear any advice that you might have as far as balancing well-being and trying to still stay up with the cadence of a fast-paced salon environment.
So the first thing I kind of want to say to this is, if we are completely committed to a 60-hour work week with no breaks, no boundaries, I don't know that exists, to be completely honest with you. And the reason I say that is I've worked with enough in my one-to-one coaching clientele. I've worked with enough super high-achieving hairdressers, salon owners, educators, facilitators, coaches, to know that if the week is already completely tapped, if our budget, personal vitality is constantly completely spent, there's not really any kind of miracle cure. There's no meditation, there's no exercise, there's no food that is going to sustain that level of abuse. So I kind of want to start with that. Like, if you want to stay committed to 60 plus hour work weeks with no breaks, no rest, no nothing, I just don't know that there is even space or vitality left to do the level of self-work that it would take to sustain that type of commitment. And let me just finish with saying that's just my opinion based on working with lots and lots of high intensity people at this point. So take it for that. There might be a few of you out there that are like, hey, I work 70 hours a week and I feel super balanced. If you are that person, please call me so I can find out what you're doing.
Exactly. Give us all your secrets. It's so funny because you and I talked about this very briefly, but I do feel as though that hustle culture was really praised, and it was kind of like, if you're not hustling, then what are you doing with your life? And I do think that landscape has shifted, but there is kind of a time and place for that. And it's almost as though that pendulum is swung so much so that self-care, I feel like it's kind of put in its own subcategory now, where self-care and boundaries have kind of been placed in the same space. And I want to get your opinion on that.
I think I would agree with you that I feel like they live within maybe this bubble of kind of like self-help or self-support, I guess.
I like self-help.
So I think,
yeah.
yes, that they live within the same bubble, but they're two very different things. Like, first, we kind of have to create some boundaries so that we actually even have space to do the self-care. Because self-care does take time and it takes energy. It doesn't have to take a ton. Let me be clear with that. Because even just like the breath work that I teach, there's quite a bit of research that shows that a lot of these techniques, 5 minutes of breath work, can actually give a a response within the nervous system for up to like 2 hours, just from 5 minutes of a breathwork technique. So it doesn't have to be, and because I think that's the other thing that people they don't do the boundary setting because they think they have to block out like 2 hours a day for it. And it's like, it doesn't actually have to be that extreme. If you could block out, or just stay committed to even your schedule that you have, because I know that that's the other challenge we have, right, Ambrosia, is like,
Yes.
it's not even necessarily boundaries, it's just sticking to the boundary that we even set, which is, hey, I work from 9 to 6. No, I can't come in at 7 a.m. No, I can't stay till midnight. So it's like we're setting boundaries, but then not holding them. So then we don't have the space for the self-care.
That's a good point, because I think maybe expanding on that a little bit, when I talk to individuals that they want to create these boundaries in order to preserve time for self-care, oftentimes they don't commit to their own boundaries that they set for themselves, or they give permission to clients, or they respond to that message. Therefore, it allows people to continue to reaching out to them. I know that you talk to one-on-one basis, but you also have larger space that you speak at events and things like that. What advice do you have for people that have a hard time kind of committing to their own boundaries that they create for themselves? Like, you know what I'm talking about? The people who, and I'm victim to it too. I'm victim to my own, not practicing what I promised to myself, or it's easy for me to put my family on the back burner and just be like, oh, they look like they're busy. I can spend an hour doing this. And I end up getting either frustrated, or my husband gets frustrated with me, or something like that. What advice do you have for people that have a hard time saying yes to themselves?
This is kind of a complicated question. And the reason that it's a big question is that it's very individual, because each person has a different reason for why they are not staying committed to those specific boundaries, why they're not staying committed to their promises to themselves. It could be that the promise it didn't have any depth to it. It was a should. Well, I should spend more time with my family. If it's just a should, there's no actual real body commitment. Like, there's no heart level commitment to a should. If it's like, in my heart, I know that family is top priority, highest priority to me, then there's a different level of commitment to those spaces. But if it's just like, oh, well, I know I should, that doesn't really necessarily have the commitment to it. So it could be as simple as that, like just finding a different level of commitment and a different level of purpose to those boundaries and to those commitments. And it could also be a hidden agreement that you've made with yourself. And this requires working with a therapist, working with a coach, working with someone that has the ability to open those doors for you, because I'm sure a lot of you listening can probably relate to that frustration that you feel. Like, you do commit something to yourself. You commit, I'm going to eat better food, or I'm going to get to bed at a certain time. I'm going to spend less time on social media. There are so many commitments we make to ourselves. And then when we don't follow through, there's that deep frustration with ourselves. And that's not helpful either, right? Like, we don't want to disappoint ourselves. That's not motivating. That's the point that we have to find support to help with identifying what is it that is keeping us from being able to stay with these things, or like I said, these kind of counteractive agreements that we might have with ourselves that are completely subconscious. Because it could be that there's a subconscious agreement that has been made way back in the past that was basically that money is the most important thing to you. When you would say that out loud, you'd be like, no, absolutely not. That is not the truth. Because in that moment, you're working from your conscious mind. You're like consciously saying, of course, that's not true. Money's not the most important thing to me. But subconsciously, which the subconscious mind runs most of your day, 95% of your day is lived from your subconscious mind. If the subconscious is still committed to money being the most important thing, that's something we have to unearth. And that's something that we have to address so that you can feel more full body committed to the things that you want. But that stuff's hard to do for yourself. That's why it's a complicated question, because it's really tough. Like, I can't just say, oh, you got to meditate more, because that's probably not enough. Like, you actually have to unearth those agreements.
I love how you worded that, though, where you said heart level, because I think the level of commitment sometimes that we place on things is not going to be deep enough, perhaps. And then it's hard to, if you're making a commitment to something and it doesn't kind of pull to something deeper, tug at those heartstrings, then it's hard to uphold those responsibilities that it would take to actually get the results that you're looking for. The last time that we talked about just like the head, the heart, the gut, there is so much that has been just imprinted into us that we don't even realize. And I think there's also stuff that happened in our past that we may block out, or we have self-defense mechanisms that automatically get triggered, or it takes some work. So I love that you took on the hard question that I asked you, kind of a deeper question, and you're able to kind of, I guess, simplify it to understanding where that deeper connective piece can actually get you the results that you committed yourself to. So if we were like kind of talking in that same breath, I wanted to actually ask you about your own personal experiences, because I know that you've made huge shifts within your career, like from being in the salon to being on the road to now your deeper calling, which is more about, I think, the way that you actually intentionally place your efforts in your world and who you invite in. I would love to hear from you, like any personal experiences or anecdotes where self-care practices have positively impacted your own professional performance.
The best example I can give was my transition to my professional coaching. I was living in my zone of greatness when I was working with Sam Villa. If you haven't heard of Zone of Greatness, Zone of Genius, there's a great book called The Giant Leap. Awesome book for you guys. I was living in my zone of greatness, which is I was really good at what I did. I was making good money. I was pretty happy. But there was something even deeper within me that was like, this isn't it. Like, there's something else more. And probably just as I say that, there's a couple of you out there that are like, oh shit, that's where I'm at. Because there's a lot of the people I coach, they're in this place because it's like, I have a great job. I'm really good at it. For the most part, I'm pretty happy. But there's something inside of me that's just like, wanting something more, like really craving something more.
Yeah.
And during that time, that's when I started to have my voice issues. And I think we've talked about that before. But I started to have my voice issues. And what I started to notice was even the self-care regimen that I currently had at that point wasn't making me feel good enough. I wasn't actually healthy. Like, I was having health issues. I was having voice issues. I'm like, man, what is this? Like, I do my yoga. I eat pretty well. I take good care of myself. I'm a breathwork facilitator, And I'm like, what is actually happening here? Because I thought I was doing the self-care work that I needed to. But it wasn't until I made the decision to actually change my lifestyle that the self-care could work. So again, I'm kind of taking your question a little bit different direction, so I apologize. But
this is great.
I think this is really important because there might be a group out there that's kind of in this place too, where it's like, but I am doing that, the work, quote, but I'm still not feeling good. And it could be that the lifestyle that we're living through 80% of our day, that even if it's 20% of our day that we're putting into self-care, that 20% can't balance out 80%, because maybe there's something deep in our heart that we're being called to greater than what we're doing right now. So the biggest act of self-care that I could have done at that point was to make my commitment to my new lifestyle. Then the self-care that I was doing did start to work. I did start to feel healthier. I did start to feel more vibrant. Here's the other piece. It had to shift and change too. The type of self-care that I did started to shift and change. I actually started to spend a lot more time in movement. Because part of this new lifestyle that I chose, there's a lot of this. There's a lot of screen time. There's a lot of standing in front of my desk because my coaching clients are all remote. So I'm in front of Zoom quite a bit. When I was teaching and traveling, even if I was on Zoom, I was demonstrating stuff. So I was moving around my mannequin head and all that kind of stuff. And so as the new lifestyle came in, it was a little bit more still. I had to add a lot more movement into my lifestyle, into my self-care routine.
It's not just the things that you need to do, but it's the intention and the purpose behind what you do. And I think sometimes we focus, or I know I specifically focus on the tasks. I'm like, give me the full recipe. I want to know like how much of this do I need? How much of that do I need? This, that, and the other. And sometimes to make the full thing, you know how they say cook with love. It's like if you are doing it, just rushing through it. I mean, people have said this before. I don't know if I've developed enough palate to really know the difference, but something that tastes amazing as opposed to something that it's like, that was good, but it was missing a little something. It's like the care that went into the thought process that actually goes into the steps that makes the difference is what I'm hearing from you. And so if we were, and you know me, I'm a lot more technical. I love to break things down in steps because that's something I can focus on because it's easy for me to jump from one thing to the next to the next. So if you could put all this into like a little package, I guess, if you will, with your top 5 tips to prevent that burnout and just, I guess those, and you said earlier, like the daily practices. Would you mind telling us a little bit about how we can start that process? Like the 5 tips that we can do to put back into a healthier balance for our day-to-day or our week-to-week schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think number 1 is what we consume. Because I don't know that we really, if we apply it to food, which is part of what we consume, I think most people are pretty aware that if we eat better food, we feel better. That's a pretty given thing that probably everyone that's listening right now knows. Probably there's quite a few of us that don't always abide by it, but we at least know that. But there's also an aspect of what we consume through our eyes and through our ears. So that's what is actually coming in through your eyes and ears, through your social media, through your newsfeed, through the television, through the books that you read, through the podcasts that you listen to. Are we feeding ourselves things that make us feel good and produce positive results? So when I say the things that we consume, it is definitely food. Absolutely. Like we all know if we're eating good quality foods that are fresh, not from a box, not fast food, we know we're going to feel better. That's simple.
Right. Yeah.
It's also, the liquids. Is it, a fresh, clean water or is it Diet Coke? Once again, I probably don't have to say that because we know it, but it's true. It does it makes a difference, but it's also through our eyes and ears. That's super important. And through our energy. If I surround myself with people, it's not just what I'm hearing through my eyes and ears, it's actually what I'm picking up through their energy too. So that's number 1, paying attention to what we are consuming. Number 2 is breath. The beautiful thing about breath is it doesn't have to be complicated. And it is probably one of the most effective tools that we all have to adapt and even completely shift where we're at quite quickly sometimes. Like a lot of the practices that I teach, the whole purpose behind the breath work that I teach is exactly that. Don't make it complicated. Like we really want to just get back to our natural state of breathing, which is our supportive state of breathing. If you watch a baby, that's the natural state of breathing. Mm-hmm. It's calm, it's flowing, and it's like loose and it's open. Mm-hmm. But for us, because we have lived in such a state of stress and things like that for so long, we have adapted to typically the people that I work with, They breathe as if they're in a stress state all the time. It's short, shallow upper chest. So number 2 is definitely breath. Number 3 is the one that I know a lot of you are going to fight against. Rest. This is something
that's me. Guilty.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Ambrosia, like high performing people have a hard time with the rest piece. They really do. And again, we don't have to make this complicated. This doesn't have to be your 2 hours of meditation. This can once again be 5 to 10 minutes of take a break, do some breathing, let your nervous system come back down. That's rest. But the research around sleep specifically has just gone through the roof in the last 3 years. And what we now know is if we're not sleeping good luck. It is so it is so important that rest time that we have. And there are some really simple things that you can do to get better rest, like actually stay committed to a bedtime and a wake up time. Give yourself some type of routine to actually let the mind calm down before rest. There's lots of things that we can do to get better rest, but rest is just, it has to happen. Number 4 is movement. Again, notice I didn't say exercise because that's the thing that scares people off. I hate the gym. Guess what? I hate the gym too.
Me too. I do too.
I spent a good portion of my young adult life forcing myself to try to go to the gym. I'd stay committed for a few months, then I'd drop the ball. Stay committed for a few months, drop the ball. Every one of us, everyone listening is probably on board with this. I know a couple people. I know a couple people that love the gym. Like they are inspired to go to the gym. Good for you. There's a good portion of us that don't like it. So that's why I say movement, not exercise. My sense and my experience, also what I've been taught by the teachers that I trust, what's more important even than necessarily the physical exercise aspect of it is the dynamic movement of the body. Because it's about moving the body so that energy can move through it too. So things like yoga, very often when I hear people talk about yoga, it's like, why? I need to stretch. Yes, yoga can make people more flexible, but especially if you look back at like the traditional true yoga, it had nothing to do with stretching. It actually had the whole purpose of the traditional yoga, which is much more than what we think about as yoga. It's actually a full spiritual practice. But the yoga was actually a way for us to release ourselves from the control of the body and the subconscious and come into relationship with our consciousness and our awareness. And that's why I do it. It's because of the dynamic movement and to connect to my body. It's also a way I practice Aikido. Martial arts, yet again. I tried karate when I was a young kid, and I hated it because I didn't want to punch people. But I do think that these things like martial arts, and Aikido is a very non-violent martial art. Once again, I don't go there to learn how to fight. I go there to learn how to be in a relationship with my body and to have dynamic movement. And when I don't do it, I notice a huge difference in my body and in my mind, in my spirit too. Be human, be realistic about this stuff, because that's, again, I think people get super stuck with this stuff. We get ultra perfectionistic and we forget that we are humans. And so be okay with the fact that, Michelle and I, we just had to spend 3 weeks kicking our butts to try to get this house ready to go on the market. You better bet that there was some McDonald's mornings. You better bet that there was a couple mornings that my 45-minute to hour and a half, personal routine was just 10 minutes of some quick movement. Okay, I have to get to work. That's called being human. But also, if we give ourselves permission to be human, the beautiful thing is then the guilt doesn't have to come in and swallow us up. Because as soon as my life demanded less of that, guess what? I'm right back to my self-care routines in full effect. Because I didn't get, oh, look at you, you're lazy. You didn't get up earlier so that you could still do your yoga, blah, blah. I didn't beat myself up about it. So that's the fifth one. Be realistic, be human. If you need to go out, hey, look, another moment of just absolute authenticity here. Yesterday afternoon, I was kind of having a moment because we've had lots of showings on the house, but no commitments yet, no offers yet. And so I was starting to really get like, oh my gosh, are we going to sell this house? Is it going to work out? Like, oh God, do we need to lower the price? What do we need to do? And Michelle was just like, you know what? Get out of the house for a minute. Like, go and process this. And at first I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for a hike. And then I was like, you know what? No, I want to go sit and have a beer and a pity party. And that's exactly what I did. I went and I sat down and I had a beer, ate some pretzels, had a pity party for an hour. And it was perfect. It was just like, because what it was doing, Ambrosia, it was allowing myself to just be human. To go, you know what? Yes, I'm freaking overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I'm kind of sad right now. So I'm going to give myself this hour to have a pity party. And when you give yourself that gift, instead of submitting to it, because there's a big difference, right? I did it with, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to go give myself a pity party for an hour. And at the end of that hour, I'm done with my pity party. That's very intentional. If it's like, oh, my life sucks, I'm going to go drown myself in beer, that's going to feel different.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
That sounds so great. And I love that you just broke it up into just really clean, easy, tangible things. I love that you just said, like, do these small little things, like be aware of what you're consuming, be aware of what your breath is doing. Are you giving yourself rest? I already said that. That's a hard one for me. Allow movement. Don't focus on it being exercise or getting ripped or whatever. Like, don't focus on that part. And then just like giving yourself grace, being realistic with yourself, and those little tangible steps, it gives us permission to be able to be flawed and to be human and to like just enjoy the day, or just say like, okay, I'm going to let this day sod off and I'm just going to be like, this wasn't my day and I'm just going to have my pity party. I love that you gave yourself permission to have a pity party, because if you don't do that and then you're just being like, I have to be this way, that makes us robotic. That takes us away from our own human nature. And why do we want to fight that? Why can't we just like lean into that a little bit more? Because then we can actually celebrate the good things, because we allowed ourselves to pity the things that are frustrating for us too. So anyway, Andrew, I really appreciate it. I always love the words that you speak, because it's so spot on and it's so like, I don't know, it just comes from a deeper place. You don't give like there's no cookie cutter answers here, but I just like that you speak from your heart. And I think that's something that if we all place like a little bit more attention into what is truly coming from our heart, and if you're feeling some sort of way, just lean more into that instead of trying to gobble up more things. Because sometimes you do have to quiet your outside space to actually listen to the inside. And when you start to let that speak, oh my gosh, I think that's when your world gets to open up. So you guys, I'm going to put some info below in the show notes so that you can get a hold of Andrew. You're one of my buddies. I love praising you. I love seeing all your stuff on social media. I love all the things that you share. And I'm excited for your new journey. I know that you guys are in the midst of moving, and I've been seeing that you're doing more in-person events and that sort of thing, which is also really exciting to see. Thank you, Andrew. And I enjoy speaking with you on the other side. And don't forget, guys, we are here to dream big, set goals, and take action. We're here for you each step of the way. And I'm so excited to watch all of you guys grow and hear your stories as well. Andrew, thank you. And we'll see you very soon.